With the signing of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law by President Biden, Reclamation takes on a new opportunity to invest in our infrastructure and benefit the American public for the next generation. We will provide information to tribal and non-federal partners throughout this process. These information sessions are designed to inform you and address your questions. Updated information about Reclamation's implementation of the law is always available at usbr.gov/bill. And questions, comments can be submitted to usbr.bill@usbr.gov. If you would like to ask a question during this information session, please click the raise hand icon and we will take your questions in order received. We are committed to transparency throughout this process and appreciate your support of this historic opportunity to improve our nation's water infrastructure. At this time, I would like to introduce Assistant Deputy Commissioner for Operations and co-lead on implementation of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law at Reclamation, Matt Masieri. Matt?
Thanks, Peter, and good morning, everyone. And thank you for joining us today for Reclamation's 5th information session on the implementation of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. Again, I'm Matt Masieri, and I'm pleased to be here today with my colleagues to discuss BIL implementation and answer your questions. Before we begin, I want to introduce Reclamation's Deputy Director of Program and Budget and our BIL co-lead, Beth Hughes Brown, with whom I'll be co-presenting, as well as introduce Reclamation's Native American Affairs Program Manager, Jeff Morris. Beth will take over a few slides from me in a moment, but let me give Jeff a chance to introduce himself to our tribal partners on this call.
Great, thanks, Matt. My name is Jeff Morris. I'm the Program Manager for Reclamation's Native American Affairs Program. It's an honor to be here with you guys. Just a couple words very quickly about our office. We do all things Native American Affairs. So that ranges from supporting the department's Indian Water Rights Settlement Program to, we have a Technical Assistance to Tribes program, which is basically a grants program. I'll talk just a little bit more about that in a second. And we also are in charge of our 638 program for tribal self-determination and self-governance agreements with tribes. Back to our Technical Assistance to Tribes program, I wanted to let everybody know that we are going to have we call it the NOFO, our 2023 NOFO, Notice of Funding Opportunity Announcement. It will be posting on grants.gov. We're hoping here in the next month that we'll be putting that out, and wanted to let you guys know about that. One benefit of our program, maybe compared to some other programs that Reclamation has, is cost share is not required for that program. And with that, Matt, I think that covers it. So thanks for the opportunity to talk.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. Okay, today's session is a continuation of the BIL dialogue that we've engaged in since December 2021. We've got some of our subject matter experts like Jeff on the phone to help us with some of your questions when we get to the Q&A portion. As you're all aware, communities across the West are dealing with historic drought right now. It's been really daunting for our partners, but Reclamation and the department are fortunately in a position to respond with financial resources and operational flexibilities and some of the technical assistance like Jeff referenced. The infrastructure law provides a total of $8.3 billion in Title IX to Reclamation, and this funding will supplement and complement the funding requested in our FY23 budget request for Reclamation's programs. So again, we're committed to collaborative efforts to ensure that the BIL investments reflect the administration priorities, and this includes investing public dollars efficiently, working to avoid waste, and focusing on demonstrable outcomes for the American people. We've posted a public-facing BIL website, as Peter mentioned, describing the implementation approach. We've included our initial 2022 and 2023 BIL spend plans on the site to provide as much detail as possible, as well as many links to the BIL-related funding opportunities that are rolling out this year. We hope that today's update briefing builds on the information we've communicated previously and gives you a solid understanding of what we're doing and why we're doing it and when it's happening and how our tribal partners can benefit from the BIL. So thank you for taking the time to be with us this morning. And with that, we will start rolling through the slides. Okay, so this presentation is only about 22 slides, mainly trying to get at what's new since last time we talked in April. If you were on that information session, it's on the website if you wanted to watch that video. And also we want to talk about what's still coming for fiscal and calendar 2022. And then most of all, take your questions and comments. Next slide, please. So just quick recap, those available resources. There's the website. We've announced something like 9 funding opportunities so far this year. We've got recordings on the past sessions where we talked about these. Spend plans are on there, frequently asked questions, news releases. There's a table that describes sort of the what, when, how approach, and there's some Buy America information on there, as well as links to the relevant guidance documents like executive orders and OMB memoranda. Next slide, please. Just to get this out there, our strategic objectives on implementing BIL work with our mission, increasing water reliability and resilience, supporting racial and economic equity, modernizing our infrastructure, and enhancing water conservation, ecosystem, and climate resilience. And with that, I'm going to hand off to Beth to take us through the next couple slides.
Next slide, please. So this is a table that shows you what is funded for reclamation in the BIL. The point here is this is the total amount funded by each of these program areas. And we are required to, by appropriation law and by the law of the BIL itself, Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. If you say bill, it sounds like you're talking about a bill. So we say BIL or Bipartisan Infrastructure Law sometimes. So this is what we can spend it on, and to the maximum amount of what is provided in this law. So, for example, for water storage and conveyance, that first item there, it's 1.15 billion, which is divided into 5 parts. So we're getting a fifth of the total amount in each of the fiscal years starting in 22. So it goes through 26. The way we are spending it based on where we are ready to spend it, where we have the capability of spending it. So, for example, water recycling and reuse that you see there for $1 billion. It's not divided into even fifths. We will be spending more than a fifth of it this year because it's ready to spend. And so that's the way we have allocated the funding in this first year. As Matt said, there are spend plans available on uspr.gov/BIL. Those spend plans are updated at the time that we move the funding from the program area to the project level. So there will be more updates coming very soon. Very exciting stuff developing within the next month or so in terms of spending BIL funding. Next slide, please. So this is telling you how the funding is allocated within reclamation. A number of you who have been on previous meetings have seen this before. We have funding that goes out the door by an external application, NOFOs, notices of funding opportunities, and so on. We have funding that goes out the door via an internal process. Things like rural water projects would not go out there for an application process. We would do them internally based on what we know in the program areas and what we've been working on for any number of years. And the last category is a combination of the two. So we have a brand new, very large program, as most of you already know, for the Aging Infrastructure, or XM program. On May 9th, we allocated the funding for that. To 46 separate projects. Very exciting stuff. Next slide, please. So the slides that you're seeing in the next couple of slides are kind of to give folks that have been following our progress a feel for, you know, the concept of why it takes so long. I'm putting that in air quotes because it's really not taking that long. Everything has a process. Everything has multi-steps, and the steps that you see there are the ones that are telling you where we are loosely by this time of the fiscal year. So, for example, the orange slices there are releases of funding opportunity announcements. Most of them have already occurred for fiscal 22. The blue slice is a review of applications, and the yellow slice is actually processing those applications and creating those grant mechanisms. This is loose, and it is flexible, and it is sometimes it happens a little faster, sometimes a little slower when you're negotiating a grant for a particular party. Sometimes it's going to take a little longer for them to get all their parties, their signatories on board and negotiate the rate and provide all the documentation and so on. It's a multi-step process, and we have people working on it around the clock, making great progress. So this really just shows you that when it goes from blue to gold, the work on the agreements starts. So next slide, please. Guidance documents. Now, we have to, this BIL has a lot of scrutiny on it. It has a scrutiny from the Inspector General. We invited Inspector General representatives to this session, and hopefully they're able to join us. We are going to be working very closely with them, partnering with them in making sure that we do everything we're supposed to be doing. As I said, this is a large investment of taxpayer dollars, and we've got to get it right. So there are additional requirements, and there's a lot of very interesting additional requirements, some of them requiring staffing up and so on. One big one is the second one that you see there, OMB Memo 22 the third one, 22-12, was talked about effective stewardship, requires us to do things like address risk, provide measures, data, and evidence for each of our program areas. That's an area where we've really just started. That memo came out just a month or two ago, and it's a lot of work. It'll be a lot of change, and we are managing that change. But the process, as has been the case for all the programs we've been working on so far, the process is changing. That we're building the train at the same time we're riding on it. So not all of that is finished, and so we're working on that on a parallel track. Next slide, please. This is just an example, right? So we have multiple different processes for getting dollars out the door efficiently, effectively, and in order to be good stewards of taxpayer money. We have contracts that take us a particular path. We have grants that take a different path. This is an example of grants and the path that grants take. It can take as much as the timeline that you see there. It can take less than that. But this is just a guideline of this. These are the things that are required by law to happen every time we are releasing a grant. In this case, a contract. The grants, the timeline is similar for grants, but this is the one for contracts. Just want to point out one thing. There's a lot of steps here. There's a lot of requirements, and it takes a while. But we've done things like streamline our processes so that steps that had been consecutive in the past are now concurrent, so that we can make things happen as quickly as possible. We've also been staffing up for purposes of getting the money out the door. And all of this is being done as efficiently, effectively, and carefully as we need to make sure that we are able to justify and essentially prove, if necessary, that we are doing things the way the law requires. So again, a great deal of scrutiny on this, but we're doing fine. And the money is moving. A lot that is very exciting about some of these programs is happening within the next month or two. So please stay tuned on that one. Next slide, please. I think we're back to you, Matt.
Thanks, Beth. So this is just a quick summary of some of the milestones that we've had in BIL implementation. As you can see, on any given week or any given month, something's going to be happening. It might be a different thing. One week, it might be a funding opportunity. Another week, it might be a spend plan. Another week, it might be some kind of event, or it might be the announcement of awards. So please keep in touch with us, keep track of the website, keep an eye on the funding announcements. There's a sign up option for some of our grants that you can do where you get the notice. You don't just have to wait to get a news release. So please take advantage of that option on our website. These are just general milestones, though not a complete list. Back to you, Beth, for the next slide.
All right. So this is an excerpt. This is kind of page 1 of a 2-page table that is on our website. It's under Water Smart. the link to that. I'll ask Peter to link to that in just a moment. And it's included in this presentation, but it tells you not just what the program is, but also eligible applicants. We get any number of questions about, am I eligible for this or for that? And this is Water Smart programs, kind of an umbrella of programs under Water Smart that gives you all of that data all in one happy, friendly, user-friendly place. So Peter, can you link us to that page, please?
I put it in chat. Do you want us to bring up the website?
If you can.
Okay, just a second.
The people who are running this operation, Chelsea and Peter, are amazing, but it sometimes helps if you give them a heads up. So sorry, guys. My point of showing you this is that it's something that everybody can reach. It's on the web. And as Matt showed you some of the earlier places where we have all of our data, our spend plans, our updates to the spend plan, and so on. This is updated in real time. It has all of that data in real time. Anybody can get to it. And they do update this every time they have a change. This is important information. It has great detail with it. And Peter did put the link to this in the chat. So please avail yourself of this information. Thank you so much, Peter. I appreciate it. So now we're back to you, Matt, please.
Thanks, Beth, and thanks, Peter. As we move on to slide, I think it's 12. This graphic is just one of the announcements we made in May. As was mentioned, BIL funds lots of different types of programs, and the biggest single chunk is the aging chunk, the $3.2 billion. We're obliged to implement that program through an application process. We conducted that first application process in over the winter from December to January, and then screened the projects and announced the selected projects in May. This is just a heat map that shows where that first application period is devoting those first set of resources. Again, it's $3.2 billion over 5 years. So we allocated $240 million of that in this first set. We have another application period that will start this coming October. Again, this is just the aging infrastructure. It's not the other stuff like water conservation, water smart, but wanted to put this in there just to give you a graphic sense of where that big program aging infrastructure is starting to allocate. So that's that. Next slide, please. Just a quick read of what's happened, where we're going. I think we've gotten through now 9 funding opportunities. We've got several more still to come. This whole slide deck, by the way, will be on our website, and it's going to change. The information will change. We try to update it in our FAQs. The slide deck won't change, but the state of play on the funding opportunities, sorry, I should say, will change as we move through time through the rest of the year. Next slide, please. So this is another heat map. These are water smart funding opportunities and where they've been awarded over the last 10 years or so. And this is, you can generate one of these for all the different types of water smart programs. There's just about almost a dozen of them. This is where they've gone since Water Smart was rolled out in the 2010s. And just wanted to put that up there to give you a sense of geographic distribution. One of our next presenter is Heidi Morrow, who works in our mission support organization. She's basically leading us through the process of procurement and financial assistance with her staff of BIL, as well as regular appropriations. So Heidi Morrow is going to take over the next 5 slides and talk about, or 4 slides, and talk about Buy America. Thanks, Heidi.
Thank you, Matt, and good morning, everyone. As Matt said, I am the director of the Mission Support Organization and here today to talk to you about Buy America as it relates to both procurement and financial assistance. First, all Buy America requirements when Reclamation contracts directly with an organization are not new. These requirements have been in place since the 1930s and were modified in the late 1970s. Reclamation has complied with these requirements when contracting for construction long before the passage of the BIL and will continue to do so. Buy America procurement requirements apply to all construction contracts, supply contracts greater than $10,000, and supply elements of service contracts. In general, the requirements are that raw materials are mined or produced in the United States and products are manufactured in the United States. Next slide, please, Chelsea. Thank you. As discussed earlier, there was a modification to the original procurement Buy America requirements in the late 1970s with the passage of the Trade Agreements Act of 1979. In general, under this act, if a contractor buys products from countries designated as trade agreement countries, they can be treated as a domestic product, or a product that's produced in the United States. It also does prohibit purchasing from certain countries. And there are thresholds for applicability of this trade agreement for construction projects costing more than approximately $6.9 million. For these Buy America provisions and requirements, there is also a long-standing waiver process for these procurement requirements if the Buy America provisions cannot be met by a contractor. And again, the ones that I've talked about right now are related to procurement with traditional construction contracts that we have, Reclamation has with various organizations. Next slide, please, Chelsea. So there is some stuff that is new as it relates to Buy America in the BIL. The BIL does apply Buy America requirements to financial assistance, which is more discretely defined as grants, cooperative agreements, loans, and other money provided by the federal government for infrastructure projects, regardless of whether or not it's funded by BIL. These requirements are slightly different than the procurement Buy America requirements. There is a preference for iron and steel, manufactured products, and construction materials to be produced in the United States. An implementation of these new requirements thus far at Reclamation have included addition of Buy America requirement language in all of our Notice of Funding Opportunities, or NOFOs, posted since early May. And there will be specific, and has already started to be specific, language in all financial assistance provided for infrastructure projects. And just like the procurement Buy America requirement, there is an opportunity for waivers for the financial assistance Buy America requirements under the BIL. There are two types of waivers. First, a general waiver, which applies to more than one project or one product. And the second is a project-specific waiver, which of course applies just to a specific infrastructure project. The waivers must be approved by either the Department of Interior or the Office of Management and Budget after a public comment period. In general, justifications for the waiver can include public interest, that is, complying would be inconsistent with the public interest, non-availability of products, which is products are not available in the U.S. in either sufficient quality or quantity, and finally, unreasonable cost. So the increase of purchasing a product manufactured in the United States would increase the entire project cost by 25%. For the Department of Interior, the OMB did approve a general six-month adjustment period waiver to include Reclamation on July 13th, so just last week or a couple weeks ago. And this waiver is set to expire on January 12th, 2023. What this waiver does is provide time for both the recipient and Reclamation to prepare to apply the Buy America provision. And during this 6-month period, as a recipient, you should be determining if you're already complying with Buy America provisions, or work so you can comply with the Buy America provisions by January 12th. However, if you as a recipient cannot comply by January 12th, there's an opportunity for you to submit a project level waiver during that six-month period which will need to be approved by January 12th. So if you don't think you can comply, start working on that waiver early. During this time, Reclamation is also working with the Department of Interior and other agencies to determine if we need additional general waivers to apply to either many products or projects. Next slide, please, Chelsea. Thank you. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, in general, the new Buy America requirements apply to any financial assistance that is used to build or modify infrastructure throughout the United States. And this slides list those specific projects. Of special note for our tribal partners, Buy America does not apply to Public Law 93-638 contracts. And Reclamation is working with the Department of Interior to complete tribal consultation for Buy America with you tribal partners for non-Public Law 93-638 contracts. On to the next slide and back to Beth. Thank you.
Thank you. There's, as I mentioned before, there's an awful lot that is coming to a head in terms of getting the funding from the programs to the project levels within the next couple of months. I would invite everybody to stay tuned to the webpage, the usbr.gov/BIL, because those announcements will go there immediately. It's exciting stuff. A lot of the things that we've had in the works are coming, finally coming to fruition. Also, Water Smart grants awarded by BIL, and also an aging infrastructure application period. As you know, there was an aging infrastructure application period that ended a few months ago, and the 46 projects were announced on May 9th. The next application period will open on October 3rd and on December 1st. So stay tuned if you're interested in that. Please acquaint yourself with what you need to acquaint yourself with as far as the successful projects from the last go round. Storage projects. Storage, the 40902 is the section of the BIL that touches on storage. It also touches on conveyance projects, and that will be happening very soon. And I don't know, how many storage and how many conveyance, but that's going to be public information very soon. And also additional funding opportunities for those new programs will be coming out very soon. Small surface water, groundwater storage is going to be coming soon. A couple of the other ones that are brand new are going to be coming soon. So all of these are proceeding on parallel fronts right now, and it's an exciting time. Next slide, please. Key takeaways. Please stay engaged. Go to our website, go to it over and over again, and get in touch with your regional representative, and make sure we know, make sure it gets back to us how it is we can help, what it is we can do better, faster, as much as possible, as much as the laws allow us to, the way you would prefer us to do it. Contact us in terms of whatever specific question you have. The usbr.gov, usbr.bil@usbr.gov is the email address that'll get directly to us, and we will find out the answer to any questions we don't already know. Although there are FAQs online at the web address that you see there, generalfaqs.pdf. So please stay in touch. We appreciate the fact that you're here again. We went over some information that we had already gone over in previous sessions, and that is because we think that there might be a few folks on this call that have not been in some of the prior ones. So hopefully the refresher was not too odious for you. Next slide, please. BIL is happening right now.
Reason we put that in there is a lot of times people say when that money arrives or when the BIL gets implemented, and it is happening in the form of these funding opportunities, this internal formulation, these spend plans, application periods. It's a lot of different things because it basically plugged money into lots of the different reclamation programs that have evolved over decades. Just put money into those existing programs. And Beth mentioned the email address. On this call right now is a staff person that works with us, Travis Yance. He's answered dozens of emails, actual real live person answers those to try to cater the information. So thank you to Travis, and thank you guys for sending your questions in. We want to basically get the information to you as succinctly and concisely in line with your needs as possible, so that you're not just having to dig for it. So wanted to make sure that it's, that it's funding opportunities, it's everything, it's a lot of different things in BIL implementation. Thanks again for listening. Back to you, Beth.
Well, I mean, I said BIL is happening now with great expression. And of course, you gave the details. I thought my way was better, but I'm just saying. And we will be a success with your partnership. And thank you, everybody, for the comments that you've made and the feedback that you've given us, including to our TRMRs and in other ways, emails, these sessions. We really appreciate your partnership, and thank you for attending today. I think, Peter, it's back to you now for questions and answers.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Matt. Once again, if you have a question, please click the raise hand icon. It's under the reactions. Raise your hand and we'll take your question in order. I do have a question from chat for you, Heidi. It's from Jerry Walker with the Fort McDowell Yavapai Nation. Does Buy America apply to the Native American Affairs Technical Assistance Grants, or is that unknown?
Gary, thank you for your question. From what I understand, and Jeff Morris, please correct me if I'm wrong, the technical assistance grants are not used for building or modifying infrastructure. And if that's the case, Buy America does not apply to those grants. If it is used for building or modifying infrastructure, it will apply.
Thank you, Heidi.
You're welcome.
If anyone would like to get in contact with Jeff Morris after the presentation today, his email address is in the chat. You can reach out to Jeff that way. Once again, if you have any questions, please click the raise hand icon. Let me check something here.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question for you, Jeff Morris. Is it jmorris@usbr.gov? Only because some people are on their cell phones and can't possibly see the chat.
Yes, thanks, Beth. Yes, for those that are on your phone, it is jmorris@usbr.gov.
Once again, if you have any questions, please click the raise hand icon. We have all the subject matter experts here to help answer any questions that you may have.
And Peter, while we're waiting, I'll maybe take this opportunity. This is Jeff Morris. We do have regional area Native American Affairs area office coordinators and regional program managers that you can also reach out to help answer questions. I'll put in the chat our website address, and on the right-hand side of that, you'll see the list of the regions, and you just click on the region that you're in, and it's got area office contacts and the regional office contact as well. So I'll put that in the chat. Just another way to ask questions if you have any. I know we've got a BIL website and a BIL email address, but just another way to make contact with Reclamation folks. So I'll put that in the chat. And for those that are on your phone, it's usbr.gov/native, usbr.gov/native. Thanks.
So I suspect that we are dealing with a number of people who have heard our sessions before and are pretty familiar with our programs and projects. We appreciate that. We think you're great. You're our partners. So I think we might be able to wrap this up. Matt, any closing words?
Thanks. No, just thanks again, folks, for riding with us on this. It looks like there's a hand coming up.
Yep.
Yeah, Garrett Altman, please go ahead and turn on your camera, ask your question, and please share your affiliation.
Hi, good morning. Sorry for my just chiming in here late. I was giving a presentation to the state here. I just tuned in the last 5 or 10 minutes. And I just had a question regarding cost share with these programs. If there have been any updates on the original cost shares that were proposed when the programs were first introduced, as far as what match can be applied, or if those are still the same requirements for tribes.
Do you have a particular program that you're interested in hearing about?
Yes, I don't have the program number, but we were looking at some of the watershed multi-benefit programs and the ecosystem initiatives, but we're also looking at some of the water control facility options or drought, leveraging the drought resilience program. Sorry, I'm trying to not get mixed up with our FEMA projects we're looking at as well. I know they were anywhere from 25 to 50% cost share requirements were in the past, and that continues to be a challenge for us now, especially with other programs we want to apply for. So we're just trying to recognize what's the most available or most effective use of the little match we do have. Sorry, I can't be more specific to the programs at this moment, but I can email as we get those more refined.
Beth and Jeff, you mind if I take a crack at that? Oh, sorry, Heidi. I'll
Go for it, Matt.
In general, thanks, Gary, for that question. In general, the cost shares are statutorily prescribed in a lot of those programs. And the good thing about the technical assistance program that Jeff mentioned, there is no statutorily prescribed cost share for that. Sometimes we've been able to leverage and work these programs together where you might use technical assistance to build toward applying for a different program with a different cost share. But in general, they're statutorily prescribed. That's the extent of what I wanted to say. I want to, and you're right though, they're variable. Some are 50%, some go up to 65, 35. It's kind of all over the map, and BIL just plugs money into those programs. Heidi, Beth, or Jeff, please add or subtract to that.
Nothing to add specifically other than Garrett, one other thing that is we've gotten some clarification on, and we may have talked about this at the last meeting, so please forgive me if you've heard this already, but the COVID funding, and I know there's a more specific term, but that COVID funding that was provided last year can apply towards cost share requirements, and that's ARPA funding. Thank you.
So I'd recommend that you send an email to usbr.bil@usbr.gov, because we want to make sure we address your specific question, and we also want to make sure we get back to you if anything changes on that front.
Okay. I know our tribe had submitted written feedback during past sessions on advocating for cost share waivers or reductions in that phase, and I understand how it's statutory in those programs. That makes sense. We have seen with the U.S. Forest Service and other federal agencies where they have been able to modify that or divert or qualify for it in other ways. And then there's also some nonprofit agencies, such as for folks on this call, Native Americans in Philanthropy are providing cost share for America the Beautiful grant funding and so forth. So but then they reduced the requirements of that funding from, I believe, 25% to 2%. So they still is a cost share, but they just made it much less. And we advocate for any options or modifications to those requirements, because that typically tends to be our biggest obstruction or hurdle in going after BOR fundings. But we have recognized that the Tribal Assistance Grant, which was available before Bipartisan Infrastructure Law funding was available, and we're grateful for that opportunity to have that resource, and that's always on our radar for applying and reapplying. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Garrett, for asking the question. Just one last call to see if there are any other questions, and then I'll go ahead and close this out. Matt or Beth, do you have any last minute thoughts?
Nope. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you all to our presenters today. Again, on behalf of the Bureau of Reclamation, thank you for attending today's information session. We are dedicated to transparently implementing the bipartisan infrastructure laws we spoke about today. Please go to usbr.gov/BIL, BIL, for the latest, for a list of all the scheduled sessions. All the previous ones are available on that site to watch, and we update the information on that site regularly. This presentation, including the PowerPoint, will be available on that site later today. As mentioned, you can also send your questions to usbr.bill@usbr.gov. Thank you for joining us today and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.